Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Astrology News Report, presented by yours truly, Ron Berger. Today is October 27th, 2019. In this segment, we'll take a look at what's happening in the Zodiac for November 2019, where the planets are, where they are going, and what to expect from the developing energy patterns. First up, we have the situation with Mercury, which will begin a retrograde period on October 31st, Halloween. This is the last Mercury retrograde period of 2019. Mercury entered Scorpio on October 23rd, but it only makes a few degrees progress into the sign when it goes retrograde. Mercury in Scorpio is the planet of reasons and explanations, the planet of data and information, in the sign of secrets and investigations. But when it becomes retrograde, Mercury will be going back over the past. In other words, digging up secret information from past events. Of course, there's already been plenty of that, and then there will be a lot more of it in the coming weeks. Problem is, with Mercury retrograde, the information and the reports can be incorrect or distorted, or at least at first. So we have to be careful about trusting the initial versions of the reports. This Mercury retrograde period will start out with some other serious complications. Venus, the planet of relationship, harmony, and guidance, is closely conjunct the newly retrograde Mercury. So initially, until Venus pulls away, the problems of Mercury retrograde will spread to Venus. This produces difficulties in social interactions due to delays and misunderstandings, as well as incorrect guidance. And for commerce, another signification of Mercury, Venus, being the planet of finance, Mercury retrograde is bad for business. Communication is an important element in any relationship. When Mercury is retrograde, communications become unclear, and Venus is, of course, the planet of love and romance. Another complication is that Mars, the planet of action and force, is still transiting in Mercury's sign Virgo, and with Mercury now in Mars's sign Scorpio, we have a Parivartana Yoga, two planets in each other's signs, which forms a sambandha, binding the two planets together. Mars and Mercury are enemies in Vedic astrology. They don't mesh that well, and especially now that one of them is retrograde. When you have the planet of combat in a relationship with a malfunctioning planet of communication, argument will be the result. The forcefulness and impatience of Mars gets channeled through an irrational Mercury, which means that misunderstandings are more likely to escalate. Well, you can see that this won't be a good thing. Fortunately, this arrangement doesn't last for too long. On November 7th, Mercury retrogrades out of Scorpio, re-enters Libra, and the Mars-Mercury Parivartana pattern breaks up. But then, a few days after that, Mars changes signs, leaving Virgo on November 10th and entering Libra from the other end of the sign from retrograde Mercury. Again, Mars forms a compelling relationship with retrograde Mercury, but now in a different way, since they will be sharing the same sign together. Gradually, the two planets move towards each other as the month progresses. The combativeness of Mars more directly combines with the disadvantages of retrograde Mercury, leading to deliberate disinformation, fake news, and so forth. Finally, on November 20th, Mercury ends its retrograde period at 17 degrees Libra, and the retrograde problems will gradually cease. By the end of November, Mercury has resumed normal forward speed in the Zodiac and can start putting some distance between itself and its enemy Mars. But the two planets will still be together in Libra until early December, when Mercury finally separates from Mars by entering Scorpio. Another big event in early November is Jupiter changing signs. After spending a year in Scorpio, Jupiter moves into Sagittarius on November 4th. This is one of Jupiter's own signs, and that's a good thing for Jupiter. A planet likes being in its own sign, where it can manifest its significations with strength. This transit is also good for Sagittarius, which can now fully express its qualities. Sagittarius is independent and willful. Jupiter is all confidence and optimism. Sagittarius is the sign of philosophies, beliefs, and truth. Jupiter is morals and ethics. Since this is one of the fire signs, and fire signs are egoic, this truth and morality is from a personal point of view. In other words, self-righteous. Sagittarius doesn't need facts. It's about personal beliefs. Remember, this energy will be available for everyone, no matter what your brand of truth may be. And Jupiter is not alone in Sagittarius. It has to share the sign with Saturn, which has been transiting here for 2 years, since October 2017. Also, there's Ketu, the south node of the moon, which entered Sagittarius in March of this year. Oh yes, and there's Pluto, too, hanging out there at the very end of Sagittarius. But the main influence will be Saturn. Since Saturn is the planet of experience and maturity, in other words, realism, Saturn will hold back the Jupiterian exuberance for Sagittarian self-righteousness, at least somewhat. But that restraint only lasts until Saturn leaves Sagittarius early next year. The influence of Ketu on Jupiter is a rather mixed bag. On the one hand, Jupiter is Guru, planet of wisdom, and Ketu, as the representative of the non-material world, is a significator of the spiritual dimension. So the two of them together should be good for spiritual understanding. On the other hand, Jupiter, as the planet of wealth and prosperity, loses its ability to produce the good life when matched up with the significator of chaos and dissolution. Ketu will be with Jupiter until next September. And then, next up in November, still in the early part of the month, we have Mars changing signs, which happens on November 10th. After having spent 6 weeks in Virgo, Mars will transit through Libra for 6 weeks. This puts the planet of force and victory in the sign of compromise. Not exactly a comfortable fit. Actually, what happens is that the aggressive qualities of Mars get somewhat muted in this sign. But remember, Libra is also the sign of idealists, and that includes prophets, fanatics, and revolutionaries who will be getting a boost from this Mars position. Another thing, having broken up its Parivartana yoga with retrograde Mercury, Mars now establishes a new Parivartana yoga with Venus, because Venus has been transiting in Mars's sign Scorpio. When the two gender planets get hooked up in any way, there's a lot of excitement, heat, and passion, and the potential for things to get a little out of control. And making things even more exciting is that while Mars transits in Libra, it will be opposite to Uranus, which is on the other side of the zodiac in Aries. The exact opposition will be November 24th, but we'll be feeling the effects before then. Note that Aries is a sign owned by Mars, so Mars is the dispositor of Uranus, and simultaneously, by being opposite, is sending juice back to its own sign as well as to the planet of sudden unexpected events. And Uranus, of course, is sending its energy to Mars, a mutual aspect. This is a rather volatile combination. The planet of action and force is interacting with the planet of sudden events, rebellion, and disruption. So, get ready. Things are about to get really intense towards the end of November. Venus entered Scorpio on October 27th at the exact same time as a new moon in Libra, which is Venus's sign. That new moon was exactly opposed by Uranus, the planet of sudden unexpected events, thus a harbinger of the instability expected in November. As described earlier, Venus gets tangled up in a Parivartana yoga with Mars when Mars enters Venus's sign Libra in the second week of November. Planets in each other's signs are in a compelling relationship. But that only lasts for 10 days, because Venus will move on in the Zodiac and enter Sagittarius on November 21st, the day after Mercury Retrograde ends. Now we will have a virtual mob of planets in Jupiter's sign. There's Venus and Jupiter itself. There's Saturn and Ketu and Pluto. Planets prefer to manifest without interference. So, a train wreck of planets in one sign doesn't really work in anyone's favor. Wherever Sagittarius is in your natal chart, things are going to get overloaded and potentially rather confusing. For one example, the USA is a Sagittarius rising chart, and late November is when the Democrats are figuring to begin the impeachment proceedings. So, lots of stuff happening in November. Compared to the beginning of the month, by the time we get to the end of the month, the planetary pattern in the Zodiac is quite different. Of course, I'll be analyzing more of the details in my weekly reports. Okay, and now a reminder. The Astrology News Report is now a paid subscription channel. You have been watching the once-a-month free public video. If you would like to see the next 4 weekly reports, donate $20 by clicking on or touching the donation card at the end of this video, which will take you to the donation page. If $20 a month is too much for you, you can donate $10. Those who support the channel will receive an email each week with a link to the week's new video. Here's a list of the upcoming reports I'll be doing in November. November 3rd, Mercury Retrograde with Mars and the effects for each rising sign chart. November 10th, Jupiter in Sagittarius, the effects for each rising sign. November 17th, update on astrology predictions and current events. November 24th, an analysis of the Sagittarius multi-planet conjunction. So, if you would like to have access to these upcoming videos, click on the donation card you see here. Thanks, and until next week.